Monday, June 22nd, 9:48 a.m. What's up, everybody? Checking back in on the markets. We haven't been doing our daily vlog as much, but some good movements today, some good things to talk about. And again, I continue to not have constitutional rights. So once again, we see that play out, and the losses and damages continue to accumulate. Not a joke in any way, but focusing on the trading and the economics. Some biology today, considering what we are looking at right now is Definium Therapeutic, previously NMMD, MindMed, its new branding, repackaging. This is the same company. And so, from a trading perspective, as we can see, we had a big pop. We had some results from a stage 3 FDA progress, or just the pipeline to get FDA approval, which we'll get to that, but it's absolutely atrocious and fraudulent. Again, the scientific discovery that is supposed to be protected by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the United States Constitution is directly relevant to biological health. And again, we'll get to that here shortly, but focusing on the trading for now, but this is heavily in this kind of, again, pure fraud of relationship between the pharmaceutical industry, the academic industry, and then the regulation, the policy coming out of the federal government and the federal agencies, the FDA, the CDC, but really Congress just in general, anything statute, is just, again, consensus is consensus. People are people. Socializing dominates all decision making. And so it doesn't matter if you're the head of the FDA or if you're this congressperson. It's just like the overall sentiment doesn't know what analysis is, doesn't know what mathematics is. And again, this stuff is proven. So once again, we have a dog barking in the background. I do not have a place to work ever. There's literally not a physical location, not in the park, not at a house. There is nowhere I can go just to focus and work at any point in time. So I continue to seek asylum. I do not have constitutional rights. It directly destroys my ability to eat properly, to sleep properly, and to work. I'm trying to stay focused. Again, this affects literally every time I try to do literally anything. But regardless, this Definium Therapeutics is something we've been following since before I've even been doing this kind of daily vlog or in market tracking since, I want to say like October. Just you can see the dates of these different videos. But regardless, this is something that I've had in the portfolio long term. Again, this isn't a real portfolio in the sense of something I'm trying to manage and grow because, again, I don't have constitutional rights. So my overall trading perspective is I don't have one. I've given up. I put all my money on treasury bonds, and I sit here waiting to get aggravated, extorted by the federal government as I'm trying to, again, leave this country under asylum. But that's just objectively the portfolio management headspace that I'm in is I don't have any constitutional rights, and I have no idea what the fuck to do when the government is the participant, the party committing the crimes. And then you have a community of people that just have, again, direct legal responsibility, direct professional responsibility, and then there's just being an adult and a grown person in an environment where it's like, hey man, my kid can go out into the world, they can lie, cheat, and steal about all of science, destroy their life, and just no one cares. How that doesn't raise every adult's hair, how there's not been a community response, but again, there is no community. There is such a failure of total moral behavior throughout every aspect of people. You just can't live a life. You literally just can't live a life. But regardless, nothing is more prevalent than that kind of manifestation than the pharmaceutical industry. Because again, this is proven. The negative reaction classifying, again, we just recently had cannabis go from Schedule 1, and then the direct legal progression was it's now Schedule 3 to in states with state-approved programs. Does the genetics of cannabis change depending on if it's in Oklahoma or in Idaho or in Indiana or in Ohio? So don't you see how we're just like completely missing science? We're completely missing the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, where it's supposed to protect your writings and discoveries? Oh, that's right. You guys have never discovered anything. You personally or the whole society doesn't know what analysis is, which is, again, the analytical progress for all research. And so in that, you can prove things in the negative. And so the sentiment response of, reefer madness using just, again, poignant, not even poignant, but just like slapstick, stupid historical examples, right? No one's really thinking reefer madness is real now. But now it's just this, okay, well, then we progress to this conversation specifically to cannabis, but really this whole environment of, well, look, there's so much revenue, we're missing out on the revenue. And then there's a big chunk of the populace that will get behind that kind of conversation where it's like, it's still morally bad or scientifically bad. And it's just like, no, this stuff is scientifically proven, safe, effective, efficacious. And we're just in an environment where the policymakers, our great Governor DeWine, can get up there on TV and say, I fight for all Ohioans. And he can get up on there and says, well, I don't think this is what I want. It's specifically into cannabis policy. And so a couple things to highlight specifically to our great Governor DeWine's response. Again, I'm using specific things that I'm pulling up. Again, you've destroyed my rights so much, I'm not even going to attempt to find these different clips. But a couple things in a simple quip or a simple statement of, again, this is in reference to Ohio's cannabis policy being more open to, I don't know if it was like combusting plant material, but just some sort of trivial little aspect of, again, the application of the cannabis policy. Governor DeWine's up there. He's like, yep, this is what the people want. Now, how do we implement this policy? And he literally says something to the effect of, well, I don't think. Governor DeWine, don't you see how that's not scientific? You prove things in science. You say, here's empirical evidence, here's why that's true, and now what I'm doing uniquely is here's all of the words you could use to describe those experiences. So then when you say, I don't, you're introducing negation. You're just saying, I, individual, not even Governor DeWine, but just I, individual, don't think. Well, you don't think in math class, you prove things, right? But it's, again, you're still in this bounding of language, you're still expressing an analytical result, and it's wrong. And then so you have policymakers who literally behave like kids, where they think their opinion has any aspect or any relevance to scientific fact. And it doesn't, obviously. But we're in a society where, again, you literally don't know what analysis is. And people see, again, I've literally called it the curse of Goodwill Hunting. You can come along and be the lone star and be the great scientist. And if you literally do that, you get scapegoated. But in reality, you're in an environment where people legitimately don't know what math is. They legitimately don't know what physics is. They're running around saying dark energy and dark matter as if the application of physics isn't the most relevant shit that has ever existed. Again, chemistry being emergent physics, biology being emergent chemistry, all of this stuff is layered. And all of our logic and scientific discourse is encoded, again, with this analytical process of what I'm demonstrating with language. And so you have things that are proven wrong. Again, this entire sentiment stigma reaction to cannabis in general and the historical progression, as well as, again, the overall alternative pharmaceutical environment. And so, as we've said, from a financial standpoint, this is the biggest conviction of discrepancy, policy not lining up with science, not even opinion, but just facts that are true. And so we get this study this morning, comes out late, phase 3. Again, the whole, in its entirety, the pipeline to get something approved through the FDA is fraudulent to the point where, again, doesn't everybody at the FDA go to school? They all went to Harvard, and they all went to Stanford, and they all went to Duke or these other great schools, right? Again, we're still right back to mathematics, right? I'm the guy that solved all of that shit. Literally all of it. And I can very literally calculate with 100% accuracy your discourse, your use of language to discuss science, anybody. And so the violation of my rights then affects the entire policy dissemination of understanding of health globally, immediately in this jurisdiction, immediately everywhere. And it's just like, we're back to, again, adults. I'm the only adult in the room. No one knows how to behave. And it's just, well, that sounds terrible, so we can't even accept it's real. And science is science. It doesn't matter. It's one of those things where people aren't like kind of wrong. They're just like extremely immediately wrong, and it's just such a direct projection. Governor DeWine, I don't think this. I don't think this. You don't think in proof. You just prove things. But regardless, that is what you're seeing here. Is we have this big response. We have a positive, specific to the science and the verbiage they're using. Right? They're saying this is positive for depression, which is not a well-defined thing. The entirety of what people call mental illness is not a well-defined thing. A lot of times it's just a way for, again, another judgmental, privileged person to be like, well, something's wrong with that person. There's a clear level of insecure behavior where people act erratically. They'll run around saying, I'm God, or I'm this, or it's like, even those types of expressions are more of just like social dynamic, and then the labeling this person's mentally ill is just like, this is unacceptable behavior, which a lot of times it is, and then a good handful of times it's just someone saying, I don't agree with that person and that person's wrong. And you can see that in context where it's like people aren't being like serious. It's just like, I disagree, he's a Knicks fan, he's mentally ill. And it's just like, that overall progression is the same thing. You put that same person in a serious situation, and it's just anybody they don't agree with. And again, and then scientifically, what is mental illness? There's just some level of like, the behavior people are trying to describe is some level of insecurity, immaturity, and then just acting erratically. But it just, again, insecurity is what people associate to as what they call mental illness. But in its entirety, scientifically not well defined. It is just a little band-aid for people. It's fraud. Like it's legally fraud. But again, we're so in depth in a world where just effectively, because words do have meaning, and people just act like they don't. They just say random shit everywhere in every context, every profession, and it's the cause of all problems. And so you have this thing called depression, which is in this category of mental illness, none of which is well defined. It's all just kind of nothing. Because then you get the positive sentiment of, someone saying, oh, I finally sought treatment and I finally got some counseling, and people pat them on the back, and it's just like this learned helplessness, pathetic bullshit. I'm a grown-ass adult. I know how to behave. My property's destroyed. Where's my money? Past that, again, I know exactly what I want in life, a career and a family. Again, it's just this weird identity and immaturity and insecurity, and people just refusing to grow up in extended adolescence, and then people accept it as real, and then they demonize some people, and then they pat some people on the back, and it's just all fraud. It's literally just all fraud. And so we're in this environment where we have a result that says, hey, this is treating depression. And so you again, specific to it's like an LSD analog, which again, specifically to pharmaceutical progression, there's always this thing where it's like we're going to isolate this molecule. Now in nature, right, you have plenty of plants that proliferate and they're toxic and they're poisonous to human beings. So it's not like saying nature is good, natural is good, organic is good. But overall decision making, when I see the pharmaceutical industry, there is some aspect of this scientific progress of isolation. I'm going to take this molecule and I'm going to isolate it, and then I'm going to recombine it with other things. Seems to be overall net detriment, or again, a substantial step of like, why are we doing this? This is a bad thing, when I see the entirety of verbiage around even like dietary sugar, salt intake, just your macronutrients intakes, then to, again, drugs or pharmaceuticals in general, just things that people would say cross the blood-brain barrier. But it's just this, you definitely have molecules that are poisonous and that are toxic, tons of them, but this overall process of isolating molecules seems to be a net biological detriment in all processing and all metabolism. And so that is like the biggest thing that I see, and that's what the pharmaceutical industry is. It's like, we're going to take this molecule and we're going to manipulate it so it's not a quote-unquote drug, which again was just Richard Nixon doing random political bullshit in the 70s, and we can just change that. We can just change that. But now, again, we've created this environment where the great scientist is going to go through this billion-dollar FDA process to modify this thing. But then again, for LSD, it's already a synthetic molecule, right? And so it's, again, we're back to this conversation we've had of intuitively, it seems to make sense. But it's like, hey, this thing, the proportions presented by nature seems to be, again, if a plant is not poisonous or toxic, it seems to present in a way because, again, a plant that's poisonous or toxic to a human being, right, it's just a defense mechanism to the plant. And so the overall proportion that is presented by biology seems to be, again, the optimum. And so just overall in pharmaceuticals, we're going to isolate these things. We're going to go through this billion-dollar FDA process to, again, try to redo what nature already did. Now, specifically to LSD doesn't really make sense because it's synthetic, but it's just specifically to cannabis or psilocybin or DMT or just any of these molecules that don't have biological toxicity. And again, we'll get to the efficacy of what they're trying to treat here in a second, but just really emphasizing this isolation process of pharmaceuticals seems to be, again, just net detriment because the proportions presented, if they're not toxic naturally, seems to be the optimum proportions. And so again, I can immediately think of like why that won't hold in its entire general. But when I say, what do I see from the pharmaceutical industry? Why is it wrong? That would be my response. And it's right. Like I'm certain of that. This distillation, this isolation, this we're going to formulate the right proportions. It's just not natural in a way where it forces concentrations, potency, that just seems to be, again, not congruent to overall metabolism in all context. Isolation versus natural proportions presented. Again, asterisks, I'm sure it's not going to be completely general, but that I did want to emphasize that just in all things biology. Most biological processes are neutral. I don't have much to add there. If anything else comes up, I'll talk about it. But now back to the efficacy. Right? What is this trying to do? Right? We treated depression. Depression's not well defined, and then we say, well, what is the result? It's like, okay, are people reporting? I'm in a better mood. So what is the problem? Again, we live in an environment where people are just clamoring over each other for nothing, and people are aware of that. We literally have a labor market that doesn't make sense to the manufacturing development, right? These big agentic workflows going crazy, and our big data center build-outs where people have to get jobs for 18 months and then they get laid off, and they go get another job for 24 months and then they get laid off. Our labor market as a whole does not make sense to how the economy progresses. And the economy progressing is so independent of one person. It's like, again, when we look at the market dynamics, we're not saying this is how the market should be and the trade's going to form to what we want. It's like we're looking for times when stuff is disparate, separated from what it, again, not should be, but just what is the market dynamic. And so then when we have these time frames of 3 years to even see a real move, and right, so back to the management of this security, right? I had to close it out at the end of last year because it did double, and this is something we've been in since like $4 to $6. And so we see this huge, again, this is a 10Xer. This is, again, we were up $1,700 today, but again, this is something we had 1,000 shares. And so that would have been $37,000, again, at current price right now. And again, that was closed at a loss of like 5,000. So like the total swing is into the $40,000 to $50,000, again, of this security, simply holding this with no, again, I don't have constitutional rights every minute of every day. The amount of damages I am suffering elsewhere is profound. And so it's like I can't even like take this shit seriously. But this is, again, shares that held 1,000 shares. Originally I remember the total cost basis was like $15,000. So it wasn't even like a great entry. But it's just one of these things where it's like we're talking about shorting short-term momentum. If you were to open up an account, deposit $30,000 and say, I'm going to trade today. Those are the convictions that we have. But the most profitable trades you can get are long-term appreciations. And so in those positions come from, again, what 3-year trend is going to come online at some point that's going to be a big one, right? Could we have caught Micron or SanDisk? Frankly, on a personal level, I would say no. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, look at this, blah, blah, blah. No, I mean, we managed it best we could. The times when, again, things changed, I thought this, and here. And so reflecting on previous trades, it's always for me, did I manage it in a reasonable way during the time? Hindsight, I don't even do right, there's literally a phrase, hindsight's 20/20. I don't even waste 1 second of my life with that shit. But point being is, right, you could look at SanDisk, and again, literally from where we closed our loss at $900 a share, and now this morning it's at, $2,300. So we literally could hit more of 100% from literally closing the loss, where we're like, okay, this is going way too high. We'd already entered a short position with a good wiggle room of hundreds of dollars to go against us, and we could still have reversed that position and made over 100%. But I'm not sitting here saying I would have done that or could have done that. Well, I literally could have, but I didn't. But point being is, looking for these separations of market dynamics and policy for these bigger 3-year trends. This is something that DFTX, this is something I did hit, where it's this, when does this exactly happen? I don't know. But this is still not like a big move. Right? I'm talking about the entire pharmaceutical sector doesn't make sense to science yesterday. And everyone's just committing fraud yesterday, today, and going to be tomorrow. And at some point, that is just, again, the biggest, most prioritized, what is anybody doing? But point being is, SanDisk versus this, 100% hit this. You can literally snap to the video in this series, Financial Trading Basics, when I say this is going to be $1 million trade, like literally. And so this would be like the first confirmation of a move upward. Again, on 1,000 shares, you would need $1,000 to actually hit the $1 million return. But again, now we kind of ask ourselves, okay, so we have a gap up. Again, I'm not in, again, if I were to make, even if this was a $20,000 win, I want to save $20 and preserve $20. But unless I literally again, I'm so done trying to do anything. But it would have to be, again, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Again, a substantial principal appreciation where I could have substantial cash flow generated from that to even remotely care. Because I'm going to get this stupid letter from the IRS, completely fraudulent, completely illegal. I just have no way, again. How much money did Elon Musk make? I own the training algorithms. I own so much property where it's just like, it doesn't matter. And so, but point being is on my direct, in this entire world of I don't have rights and nothing, and I have suffered so much damages, no dollar figure on the screen could matter. I'm still managing it like I want to preserve every single penny I have. And so, to the management this morning, again, even a couple $1,000s. Again, you're sitting up $1,600. I mean, obviously a good bump, but this is a sector where it's like this is one where we don't want to cut something short. When does this play out? Does it trade all the way back down? Does it gap fill? I suspect not. But this is one of those things where the policy and the science discord, regardless of the overall crime that I'm personally enduring, it's just sitting right there. And it's just like, what is anybody doing? I don't know. And so this is one of those things where, sitting right at 10.09, this is not a big sell-off. So a big sell-off would kind of be concerning, but for overall management, if there was a big sell-off, this would be something I'd be adding to. This is not a profit level I'm looking to secure. But this is, I'm much more, again, we get into a short position, we go into profit, there's a stop loss on it immediately, I can always re-enter. This is something where it's like, again, hold Bitcoin for 7.5 years, lose out on, again, $4 million, $4 million for not being able to hold. Again, it doesn't even like a loss, like, or not, it doesn't even matter. Like, it's just, I don't have constitutional rights. And without constitutional rights, there is nothing, no dollar amount that could change anything. My life is fucked. And it's illegal and it's done by, nobody cares. Trying to focus on money management. And so this is something I'm just going to hold. I don't expect a big sell-off. If there is a big sell-off, I will add to this position a little bit. But this is just a position I'm going to hold. Overall time frames, again, this stuff should have been for everything we just described. This yesterday, why this stuff hasn't changed yesterday, I don't know. With still no acknowledgement of my overall research body, all of that stuff. I mean, this is just direct biological things to everybody. And so again, back to this treats depression. Depression's not a real thing. Mental illness is not a real thing. We live in this environment where people are clamoring over each other. And again, that's a measurable physical thing. That awareness in your head of, why did Johnny at the office, say something behind my back to get the promotion? Why did Susie do this? Why did one person do this? It's all just this, again, back to this kind of dichotomy in finance of game theory, where I can cheat and I can get one ahead of you. And there's this kind of concept of a race to the bottom, where in reality, if you create real value, there is so much dollars that splooge out of that so quickly, meaning one person becomes a billionaire, they feed their whole family, they feed everybody, right? You need one moment of real value generation to change a community's life. But now we're all one species on a rock. We have so much value generation where this, again, we can raise the quality of life for literally everybody. And so, but point being, where was I? I was going somewhere else with that. But just when they say they're treating depression, again, you take LSD or an LSD analog and you're literally routing, right? It's the same environment and you're routing through, like, your brain processing is through a novel neural circuitry. So that's why you feel a little bit different. But the reality is the problem is, again, literally insecurity transference. No drug, no music, no this, no that. Literally social beings, human beings being social and just transferring little gossip here, little this there, little behind the back, something over here. It's that awareness. And then when people take any substance, they have a drink at the end of the day and take the edge off, or they even go on a walk, it is all just removal of that insecurity, because we're social beings and you're processing other people's dissonance. And it's literally just transference. It's literally just like a baby screaming at you all day. That's literally what's happening everywhere. And so again, then kind of like the converse to that, and you can see this sentiment expressed when people are trying to be creative. Right, a lot of rappers that I listen to, certainly in like the early teens, like 2013, but like when lean, right? We made the joke with Terrence Tao, our mathematical formalization, lean, but like promethazine activists. And there was just this huge wave of like, I need to be, specifically Gucci Mane, I remember reading in his book even, like, I needed to be on lean to be creative. And just in general, like a lot of people are like, oh, I need to smoke weed to get in the studio, specifically using music. But, your average business person, I need my morning cup of coffee. It's like, I need my this, I need my that. And it's like, you don't. There is no part of, I think I can speak on creativity. There is no part of the creative process that isn't a process. I'm going to go think about this thing over here. Then I'm going to go on a walk over here. Then I'm going to go try to do a business over here. Then I'm going to go work on my music over here. Then I'm going to go talk to this person and work on this relationship over here. And then this realization is this accumulation of doing that over the days. And so this creative process has nothing really to do with any substance. Certainly has nothing to do with one substance, but it's just this removal of insecurity. And so that's all a social dynamic. And people have not really articulated that. People don't really get that. And it's very literally 14-year-olds just bitching about one another. So huge problem, but that is, again, it's because, again, this is still a financial trade that I'm taking, but we just said depression isn't real, and it isn't. The treatment of depression is just kind of like the removal of, again, processing literally physical neuron pathways that haven't been trained and just like exposed to this bullshit. I mean, that's very literally what it is. And so you have again, LSD should be legal yesterday, psilocybin should be legal yesterday, all of these, again, the whole, I'm not going to make this a whole drug video right now, but again, we've already made those videos. Like I'm saying, this is all a derivation, it's all one expression of analysis. And so that's what I wanted to cover for the trade. Something I'm just going to hold. The overall pharmaceutical industry is atrocious. The policy regarding it is fraudulent. And I'm still waiting for all of those people from Stanford, Harvard, Duke, all of these big medical schools at any time. Again, the complete derivation of the logical structure you could express is sitting on the internet. Speciality is special with an ITY, and we're almost done with another iteration of the whole thing. So, again, there is no analogy you can use. There is no realization that is unique. You have to relate your personal experience, your identity, to the culture you exist in. Work, power, energy, velocity, potency, rhythm, vibration, all rigorously defined already in a proof. Done. And we're doing another one. But we're going to sit here and, do nothing. So that was kind of, again, the big movement for today. I still want to do another biological video, kind of just like going over blood work. Nothing I say is to like reflect my personal life or whatever, again. But there's just things that are true and proven, and you guys don't know what proof is. And this is one of those things where like the resistance to legality of cannabis specifically, and anything psilocybin, DMT, LSD, non-toxic substances is just it's purely fraudulent, and it's purely historical. That person's mentally ill, that person's not me, that person is, I don't understand this. And then again, if you ask Governor DeWine, hey Governor, would you say you're an expert in biology? No. Are you an expert in pharmacology? No. Well, I'm an expert in all of language and logic, and that's at a historical level where you've never even seen before. I am the guy at all of the things that is logical, which is, again, any bit of, let's go from point A to point B. Again, logic is the relationship between things. But that is what I wanted to keep this economics. Just I haven't been on the markets in a while, but this was a big one. Again, this was the one where it's like I knew this was going to happen. This is one kind of another trade we've talked about is Q-Ray, where it's like, well, this is not going to happen. This has kind of popped back up, but the original, again, what they're treating over here, this kind of another big pop. But we did get something over here. I'm not sure why this is back up. But the point being is just specifically to the pharmaceutical industry, there's literally times where it's just like from a trading perspective, it's like, we're going to do this thing. And it's like, I have directly proven this right or wrong. And it's like, even the structure, right? Somebody can come in here and say these words, or somebody can come in here and say these words, but like the structure of the progress of like what's going on, it's like, this is going to get approved. This is definitely not going to get approved. This is going to get set back sometimes. But it's like a good... If I were trading to like try to make money, I would be in the pharmaceutical sector for sure, 1,000,000%. Because there's a lot of things where it's just like, this couldn't be anything. But point being, specifically to our trade log, conviction of SanDisk versus DFTX, or the previously MNMD, was tremendous. This is one of those things we're kind of reacting to the short-term progress of definitely momentum, definitely the forefront. The memory sector is the thing that has huge appreciations, huge focus, huge spotlight. And so trying to, on a direct trader level, the sector is like the overall policy and 3-year move to like background 10-year of what's going on, policy to sector is what I'm looking for. And then these 3-day reliefs of either up or down is what I'm saying is like the most predictable conviction entries and exits. And so point being is, as we're doing that kind of the 3-day short term, maybe we'll catch a larger trend, but short term, not really conviction on this memory sector. But the DFTX, the MNMD, was a high conviction policy thing. And so luckily we missed out on $50,000. That's fun stuff. It's really cool when you, again, all things considered, I still had these shares. But again, the amount of damages I incur every single day, all day, is just profound. And so unless I were to personally clear, so then it gets back to the tax thing. It's where like, I owe no taxes. I don't, there's nothing I can do. My life's fucking over. But that's what I'm sitting here, is waiting for this illegal, fraudulent extortion letter, in which I will just respond and say, I don't owe anything. Here is my constitutional rights. I've sought asylum. Like, I've made official statements, like, leave me the fuck alone. Because it's such a big step, because, again, I know people are, like, everything that has my name on it that comes across, everybody knows about it. It's just, like, make this shit stop happening. I continue to ask for a little bit of money to eat properly, to sleep properly, and to work. No one cares. Couple more things I wanted to talk about finance. Again, I really like talking the market. It's this environment where you always get new things to talk about. Fundamental science is solved. Even like emergent science. Everything I've said from like I go to Barnes & Noble, don't really pick up a book where it's like this person's presenting anything novel in logic. Because what we are doing every time we say sensorality is we are renormalizing the conceptual structure of where logic and proofing could be. And so it's like giving yourself a haircut every 5 minutes. It's like it's not that big of a difference. And it's because there's no more hair. It's not because I can't cut anything else. Right? You can't solve stuff that hasn't been developed yet. But we should be close over in science class. But in the market, again, more strength in memory. Again, it's June 22nd. I was if there's a blowout. So SanDisk is now at 2,300. For me to enter over here, this is certainly a level where I'm saying this is precarious overall again. But it's not, we haven't seen severe trading action. If there was a blowout into, again, 2,500 plus 3,000, might take another short with, again, literally one share, risk $300 to $500. But would really kind of wait for kind of a blowout over here. Again, in the short term, again, we're still seeing, again, the news cycle into 2028, 2030. The agentic super cycle, as we derived yesterday, is just ripping along. But if there's any sort of blowout, might take a little short. Overall market cap, we're now, again, right around 350 billion. And so it's just, to me, that's like the biggest thing, is just like overall market cap in comparison to sector market cap, just as like a very light psychological level where people might be like, I should think something different, because I don't know what anybody else is thinking on stuff like this. But again, from a trading, let's make like I'm sitting out on the market, let's make money. Why should I buy this? Why should I sell this? Again, not short, not long bias. Give me a reason to have conviction one way or the other. Don't really, again, I already have perspectives, but again, I can't emphasize enough. I don't have like a bias. It's just, what is the market dynamics? Where can I click buttons to make money? And then let's manage this in a reasonable way possible. Is always how I approach this stuff. So feeling pretty salty about the QQQI. Again, we're seeing strength over here. Now we're missing again June 22nd, so we just missed the next dividend. And so again, we could have bought down here, but again, I'm just not in like if I make another $300 a month, or if I do this, again, the overall crime being committed against me, it just dominates my headspace, and the prioritization is to do my mathematical derivation. And in the past year alone, I've, again, re-derived the entire logical structure with video. Like, how much property is that worth? Very literally, provably infinite. Actually, literally. How long is the American stock market going to be around in relation to, again, fundamental science? They're both probably going to be along for, again, indefinitely into the future. Fundamental science is still provably longer. Why can't somebody give me a little money is profoundly and insanely stupid. Regardless, again, we've missed another dividend over here. We did have a good buying opportunity down here. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Thought there would be a little, again, I didn't expect another bounce back so aggressively. But we did have some geopolitical progress, not progress, the same whipsaw roller coaster. We have the signed memorandum of understanding beginning of last week, and then Pakistan's leaving us. J.D. Vance is showing up yesterday. Iran saying the strait's not closed. Then it's open. Then it's closed with tariffs. And then it's just like, exactly what we said. But I'm surprised with what we said and documented, that this type of bounce back, again, I thought there would just be overall less reaction in general. And so I did not think there would be this strong of a... Frankly, I did not even see... The reason we sold this back in here, again, 2 months ago at this 53 level, was because of this bounce, which I thought that was a bounce out of the war. And then this continued upward was just kind of, to me, just kind of happened. And then this retracement from that kind of just going up also just kind of happened. But this type of severity of move is what we sold for to avoid, dumping back into like the 50 level. But regardless, and then this kind of snap back up is another just kind of like all in this world of like no conviction the entire time. And so I could say shoulda, woulda, coulda, but on these index funds, I actually would have, because again, if it goes down more, I would have put like another, 5 to 10,000 back on here. Previously, again, we had, I think it was like 40,000 total on SPYI and the QQQI. So I would have done like, again, a 30%, like a 15,000, 10,000 for these index things, something I plan to hold. And so overall market conviction, no change there. It's just like, are we going to go down for 6 months or 18 months at some point? Probably. Is that going to start any time in the next 18 months? I don't know. No real conviction, overall market. And so SpaceX IPO'd. This was, again, expecting it, but even people say it's going to be really expensive. It's just like, it's all relative, right? If somebody buys it at 140 and it's worth $16 quadrillion and it goes up to $17 quadrillion and people make money or lose money. Again, I don't care if people make or lose money, but just it's like you buy at one price and it goes a percentage change of that underlying is what matters. And so Elon Musk was a trillionaire. Is he still a trillionaire? Is this liquid? Can you sell this? If Elon Musk starts selling his SpaceX, I'm assuming a lot of people are going to start selling their SpaceX. We have this lockup period. And so, again, typically, I have my understanding and following of IPO dynamics is you get a kind of pop and then you kind of trade down. And then, again, like Facebook is the biggest one in terms of like scale and size and hype. Which is still way smaller than SpaceX, but would be like to me the most comparable. But again, I don't no conviction on this whatsoever. But we saw 3 days pop up, sell off now. I think we're still in this lockup period where this is just open market of people buying and selling since the IPO. But no real conviction or no real thoughts even. This was just the biggest IPO and the thing people have been talking about the past week or so. So is Elon Musk still a trillionaire? Again, to me, net worth, to me, cash. So what is worth? Here's a ontological question. What is worth to liquidity? Right? And to me, that's why I say cash is your net worth. Right? You have to, again, logically trying to get to somewhat's like the availability of currency. liquidity is your capacity to access liquidity. And so, like, when you have cash, you are the liquidity or the access to the liquidity. And so it's like that's your worth in an economic sense, is somebody can give you a good and you can give them dollars. So you become the something. It's a thought, it's a feeling, but what is worth to liquidity. And so when people say their net worth, to me, is their cash. Again, doesn't matter, just a thought that came to my mind. But so we had further sell-off in CF. This was another thing we've been following. Again, this would have been, again, a very high conviction. Again, just a relatively cyclic, relatively stable demand-supply cycle, clear agitation, clear appreciation from the war, and then we just dwindle. And this would have been a pretty high conviction one. And we closed this again. Wanted to avoid the dividend as well as the earnings. Not familiar enough with the sector. But again, when you're in this liquidity environment, the stimulus, the trading dynamic is to the liquidity, sentiment, and momentum, not what caused it to start moving. Again, you're still going to read the news headlines. You're going to still see why it's moving. But overall, again, unless it's a headline like, hey, this person committed extreme fraud, which everyone's doing. Again, excuse me. Again, SanDisk is Brad-disk, NVIDIA is Brad-vidia, Google is Brugal or Brutal, Brattle, whatever. Again, your legal liability from the people you've hired, from your business operations, from your violation of my rights, far surpasses all of the market cap of everything, genuinely. So your legal liability, again, there's a lien on the entire marketplace, not just the United States stock market, just all of academia, all of your tentacles. It's all fraud, directly and immediately. I continue to ask for a little bit of money, and it's still just like, go fuck yourself, Brad. Awesome sauce. But CF, this would have been another high conviction. We see, again, our trade prospectus just dwindling, less reaction to the overall war headlines seems to be playing out over here. SanDisk, again, the overall, when we were on QQQI, do we see this as, again, I don't know why they said that's a zero conviction. This is kind of just doing stock market stuff. But I do see the fading of CF as relation to the war. This appreciation, again, when it snapped back here, was definitely a response to war headlines. Where this is at, it's just like, because again, I still see heightened overall activity where I think I don't know what a resolution now looks like. Again, it's just like I don't know. Fucking the world sucks. But decision making, I just got nothing else over here. And so I would expect, again, I don't know where the headlines are at literally like this moment, because over the weekend we had this memorandum of understanding signed, and then it was just like Iran called it off right when the weekend hit, and it's just like, what is going on? Nobody knows. And so do I assess this appreciation from this sell-off within the past, 10 trading sessions as a reaction to the war? I don't know. But I kind of have a light bias and say no, and think that it's, again, people just, again, excited, like hopium, as the kids would say. It's just like, oh, everything's done. But in reality, you just have like heightened activity where I feel like the summer lull is still going to happen. I feel like July or June June's almost done. I don't know. I'm now into a place with no conviction moving on. We have a small position open at Joby. Yeah, nothing over here. Just kind of holding on, hoping for our helicopter rides. So I'll probably cut this here. Jemmy, again, that was the big thing I wanted to cover. Just the DFTX started to move, and then just brief comments on the overall market. So further sell-off, that doesn't look too good. Again, it's just like, obviously, it's like, again, if you want to save, always want to preserve profits, always want to, anytime you have exposure and it goes down, you're losing money. Anytime you close something and it goes back up, you're like, oh, I missed out. So again, this is just something, strong move, good overall news. Wanted to cover the science a good amount. Again, continuing to emphasize the amount of fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy that people don't even know they engage in. It's just such a profound net detriment to our entire society. We don't have a society, man. You can't live a life, you cannot have a career and a family where people are too stupid to know what science is and too arrogant to respect the law. It's an unlivable environment. But I thought we covered some good stuff over here. Nothing else on the overall market. Might be a standalone video, might not. Well, you'll see it when it's up there. So that is what I have for now, finishing up at 10:33 a.m., and we will check in later. Monday, June 22nd, 1:47 p.m. What's up, everybody? I thought with the discussion this morning, it'd be a good section to stay with biological topics, so we'll use a little bit of my situation. Once again, grave bodily harm, really fun stuff. But I don't have constitutional rights, and then we'll just, again, generalize the concepts. And just talk about some things with overall, again, standardization of healthcare, but just application of biological topics. Just something that came up from, again, currently looking at DFTX. We had some, again, recovery, if you want to call it, from a sell-off, but it's actually holding up pretty good. And so, not too much new on the news. We had Alan Greenspan die, so, hey, death is a biological topic, so we'll talk about some biology. And so, again, it's been, I don't know. Again, I haven't had constitutional rights at any point in my life, but again, directly articulating, hey, I cannot eat properly, sleep properly, and work, but specifically eating and sleeping for many, many years. And so, at no point in my life, again, regularly consumed beer specifically for probably about right around 7 years, right? That's 6, 7 again, but specifically one of the topics being just cellular regeneration about this 7 years, right? Your cells regenerate every 7 years. You have this DNA code, and it seems to be any sort of chronic disease is really a manifestation of some sort of disruption, prolonged, anything you would call a chronic condition, some sort of prolonged exposure to disruption of the DNA encoding to where it kind of replicates, or after this 7-year period, it seems to be kind of like gets encoded into the actual DNA structure, as opposed to, again, when people talk about acute and chronic in a medical context, acute, we have a really well-defined minimum, or, acute disruption is death, right? Any activity that it results in enough acute disruption to any biological function results in a death. And so we have a pretty well-defined limit or boundary there, but everything else, as we established and talked about, is pretty biologically neutral. And so, again, your fat, sugar, protein composition of your cell, your standard biology 101 is true and correct. And so pretty much, again, to avoid disease, you just want to avoid disruption and just prolonged stimulus. Again, I don't have constitutional rights. I have this learning capacity that people literally do not understand. And so it's not any sort of emotion. It's just when you get disrupted, you can't eat. And then it becomes this situation of, I need to consume calories. And so sipped beer for probably, again, regularly for again, 6, 7 years, 6, 7. But again, this overall kind of presentation of cellular regeneration, you kind of get this chronic or just disease presentation, to me, in a lot of contexts, just after 7 years of kind of like prolonged exposure to any stimulant. Again, specific stimulant in the sense of inflammation agent, something causing biological stress. In my case, the liver, exposure to alcohol. So kind of the concepts that kind of just come to mind is kind of seeming like simple, direct questions, but right, if you eat a lot of food, right, why doesn't consuming, well then, dietary sugars is this big agent where it's called caustic, where it gets metabolized in a way that causes biological stress. So we have this concept, right, pressure in fundamental physics, stress more generally, but inflammation has been the big buzzword, again, accepted in ontology. Inflammation is bad, and it is. And so anything that causes, again, I'm just kind of freestyling here, just anything that comes to mind. But we have, again, just prolonged exposure that's causing detriment or stressing your cell and at a certain amount of time, which seems around 7 years, which is completely consistent with this iteration limit, cellular regeneration. Hey, we're under this constant stress. We can't, first of all, get any break to sort of renormalize to just a normal, stable equilibrium. But we're going to encode this disruption into the DNA, which kind of produces your different like gradations, specifically for the liver. Again, fatty livers, it's kind of more just like the presence of these. You consume alcohol, it metabolizes the alcohol, and then that fat is stored within the liver cells. Then if that fat is present long enough, it starts to do damage when you get the verbiage of scarring and fibrosis. And then the overall general principle of limiting of elasticity, you get firmness, you get stiffness. And so in general, elasticity is this term. You're always trying to preserve functionality. You want to be elastic. We're 70% water. But point being is, you have these prolonged periods of exposure of inflammation, kind of the overarching most general word, but then that kind of encoding where you're disrupting the cellular regeneration process where you're encoding that damage. And so that's kind of when you get the progression from, kind of different stages and gradations of fibrosis, the late stage being cirrhosis. Then in cirrhosis, you have, the compensated and decompensated. And I guess like the worst gradation is decompensated cirrhosis. And cirrhosis is, again, a concept or something that applies to any organ. Hey, our cellular functionality has deteriorated to the point where it can't regenerate at all. It's like, and so you see these time frames where that's kind of like the biggest thing that I'm seeing is just some level of, again, that 7 years seems to make sense of just iteration, continued exposure, and then you're encoding damage. Because in the different gradations where it's just like it's meaningful chunks of like progress of a disease. But again, when exactly does, fibrosis 1 go to fibrosis 2? And so that was one of these things where it's like the diagnosis that I got was liver fibrosis with the KPA, I think it was 8.5. So it was like kind of the higher end of L2 or right in the middle of L2. Again, there's not even like a standardized kind of thing, but kind of, frankly, again, kind of what I expected, to be honest. I mean, not a good thing, but again, when you're in this position of I cannot consume calories because of direct crime and people just demonstrating left and right, they don't get that. I mean, it's grave bodily harm and direct violation of my rights. That's just what it is. But in the overall mindset, again, it's not some sort of emotional thing. It's just like you have to consume calories, and it's just like I don't know what else to do. But point being is, regardless of, right, because you go into the doctor, you get this recommendation from the FDA for a variety of different things. And so one of the general points I wanted to emphasize was, from a biological, scientific perspective, I think again, you have enough bodies, enough people going into doctors where the standardization is pretty meaningful. Like, everyone's different, but all our genetics are the same, or same enough where, the different gradations when you get your metabolism, your blood work back, those ranges seem to be meaningful, again, with some emphasis putting on that I feel like the population is just not overall stressed, which is a good thing. But like when you get a recommendation of, how many alcoholic beverages can you have? Well, 1 is good for males, or 2 is for males, 1 for females, or, less than 2 drinks a week, or just the recommendations in general seem to be a very, again, reflective of like the day-to-day behavior of the average person, where you have to like go to work and stuff. And again, at no point am I trying to like defend any one behavior or encourage any one behavior. I'm just talking about the science and the empirical evidence I see. But like any type of recommendations, even like caloric recommendations, just overall the 2,000 calories, or again, overall sugar or overall salt. It just seems to me that the overall guidelines are decently pretty good. I mean, overall good. It just, with this added scientific consideration, I don't feel like people are stressed in a sense of like, hey, let's push something to the limit, and you shouldn't push things to the limit, but just people err on the cautionary side. But then the overall general populace, again, all of our food, in the context of all of human history, you can drive, if you're in a city area, a metropolitan area, you can drive less than 5 minutes and have all of your food needs completely met. You can go to a pharmacy, completely met. And so just the overall day-to-day life of the human being in the context of evolutionary progression is very not stressed. And so then you even get like recommendations of like data sets of like cruises, right? You go on an all-inclusive cruise, and like the drink limit of like 15 alcoholic beverages a day is kind of like some sort of evidence of like what is an extremely not stressed person that's just kind of sitting around, hey, well, I'm not doing anything, kind of bored, right? Let's have a drink. And so you kind of see just like these, like, the limits of people, like what they would naturally kind of get to if they're just doing nothing with no health concerns. Hey, we're away for a week, nothing really to consider in terms of like chronic anything, and it's just this kind of limit. And so again, just point being overall, that it seems like these numbers of the actual recommendations for a variety of different things is on an unstressed populace. And again, just to point that out, not to say they should go push the limits by any means, but it does seem to be where it's just, again, the limitation is, again, the work day. People have to wake up and go do things. And then if you took somebody where they have, they're retired or they're wealthy, young, and it's just they have like no responsibilities, just kind of like what that behavior is throughout the day. And at the same time, they're not like chasing some extreme. They're not skydiving. I mean, they're demonstrating a behavior where it's like, hey, I'm trying to live a high quality life for as long as possible. I'm not taking stuff too seriously, but just a normal, average, healthy mindset. Just point being is that the recommendations seem to be reflective of a very unstressed populace. But regardless, with that being said, the different like time frames specifically for the liver progression, I mean, it seems to be meaningful steps of, again, just how much can your cells bounce back. And then so it's like, they'll say reversibility certainly for fatty liver, a good amount probably for, moderate scarring, which is, again, right in the range that I'm at. And again, on a personal level, again, no point of this is to rationalize or talk about my behavior specifically, but like zero draw to alcohol. I've no, like, I haven't, I don't know, a year and some, but like while drinking, before drinking, during drinking, like I didn't even start drinking regularly until I had nothing to do, very literally nothing to do. And I had like no previous, like any sort of regular usage of literally anything. And so on a physiological response, like I said, my natural presentation of just existing, a good night's sleep, which is so infinitely rare for me, is like the best thing to be like, wow, my senses are like ready to go. So again, no physiological response from any substance to like increased creativity, which we talked about this morning, which again, I think is evident throughout the entire populace. But regardless, the like calling alcoholic hepatitis, like that makes scientific sense to me. We've talked about how, again, a workaholic and an alcoholic and a thisaholic is more of just this underlying insecure behavior where people go at one thing, and it's like their identity and this immature kind of like trying to be a something, and just this weird behavior. But saying alcoholic hepatitis makes sense, direct disease caused by the chronic exposure to alcohol processing, specifically certainty on terms of the cause, that makes sense. So that makes scientific sense. So on a personal level, again, just don't drink anything, 0% difficulty. So I haven't. Just for documentation, since leaving the hospital, I took a 300 milligram CBD edible up until the last time I went to the doctor, got my blood work, which we'll get back to the general here in a second. And then from there, had, again, effectively normal blood work with a couple, and we'll get to here in a second, but effectively normal blood work with some moderate to, I think it was substantial moderate scarring, the exact verbiage you get on L2, whatever that is, the thing, 8.5 kPa. But the what did I want to say? More to the general. But then after that blood work, or after the first time I went to this liver specialist, I dropped that 300 milligram, and that was to like any sort of cancer buildup or mass buildup, and there was no ascites, no mass. The description was like diffuse, with substantial or moderate scarring or buildup. And so again, I expect some again, I'm not trying to rationalize anything, but the cellular progression, again, in the context of what's documented, seems to be, again, some return, some reversal, not expecting much, but again, overall quality of life, just don't drink again, or just don't drink excessively. And I have zero draw to alcohol, so like none. And so it's just like, don't drink anything, no problem. And that is why it's so profound of a crime, is because if I just had blood work where it's like, hey, your enzymes are elevated for X amount of time, and this is just fatty liver, and you just stop drinking for like 6 months to a year, and it just clears out, is like 0% difficult. But luckily for me, I'm surrounded by a security apparatus constantly in person poking at me, and it's like, you look healthy. Again, people vocally telling me, like, it's just like, you guys just destroyed my life. So again, profound, extensive crime, sticking with the biological topics. the what was I see? It's so much crime. It just makes me. But point being is, some amount of reversal, hopefully, but the normal range, like the kPa for the stiffness of the liver specifically. Again, this applies to any organ that has dysfunction or some damage in response to chronic exposure. And so the normal range, it says like 2 kPa to 7.5, which is one of these ranges where it's just like, it seems like a pretty big range for what would be normal. And then going from again, there was no hard cutoffs. It's like there's these different scores, and it's just like, again, they're meaningful enough. I mean, there's enough cellular change to have these levels. I mean, that's where they come from. But it's just like, the 2 to 7 struck me as a big normal range, and then I don't know, it was 7 to 9, or again 9.5. Again, it was they even have different gradations for what the cause agent of the hepatitis is. And so you can just have again, fungal infections or hepatitis C or one of these other different. Again, hepatitis just means disease of the liver, but point being is you can have another causative agent causing your liver disease, and it has different scores for stiffness, which to me, that doesn't strike me as super scientific unless there's, again, concurrent, hey, if you have Crohn's disease, you're just weakened overall, so this is more stressed over here. That struck me as strange. But just point being overall, then to the blood work, where it's just okay, now we're at the doctor-patient interaction. It's just when we do have standardization, which does seem good and solid, again, just with that consideration or emphasis that it's an unstressed populace. Again, that's just a scientific point. But it's just what's the point of going into a specialist? Right? You get your reading, which I agree with in terms of you have a specialist read it, they give you a readout, but there's enough standardization, there's enough human beings going in for different things where no one's that different on a cellular level, where it's what's the point of me going into a specialist? And they're did you? So here's another point, is I go into the doctor's office. This is supposed to be a liver specialist, which again, they're all still associated with Ohio State, which right here in central Ohio, we're all still violating the law, and this is all still supposed to be protected by the Constitution, and this is my direct personal health, which I can't take care of for, again, hilarious, again, ghoulish crime. But I go into the doctor's office, and because I've had high blood pressure throughout my life, again, as this stress, this whole, again, not having constitutional rights and this awareness is my entire since college, the whole thing. And so that's when I had high blood pressure. What a surprise. But frankly, in the past year, my blood pressure is extremely normalized. And so I take my blood pressure, frankly, it's been literally normal, 110 to 115 over 70. If I take it, and again, when you take a measurement of anything, it doesn't even make sense to say a number unless you take it 3 to 5 times. So when I say one measurement, it's an average of 3 to 5 times. And then I take that 3 times throughout a day. And so my blood pressure, again, if I take 100 readings, 99 of them are normal, and then one might be 128 over. Point being is I used to have readings where it's just it was always high, into the 130s and 140s. And then again, when I go into a doctor's office, again, at no point does this synchronicity ever turn off, ever. And so it's just immediate calibration when you meet a new person. Like anybody else who's met a new person, you're trying to feel people out, literally. And then so I go into the doctor's office. She takes literally one blood pressure reading one time, and she's like, okay, so they're going to put you on this little, they'll probably put you on a little pill. And it's just again, this chick who's 60, and I'm just this is not science. This is a lawsuit immediately. And then once again, I have no ability to do anything. And so again, all of my doctors' names are obviously recorded. But again, this is fraud, racketeering, conspiracy at grave bodily harm in an egregious fashion of application of science directly, immediately. And the first thing you do is something that's fraudulent. I mean, that's not even a valid approach to science ever, is taking one blood pressure reading and then prescription. I mean, that's fraud. I mean, that's a huge problem. Because it's not just me. And I'm just nope. I take my blood pressure regularly. I have a cuff here. I go to a regular pharmacy, so it's not the same blood pressure machine. Because I've had this before where it's I know on a personal level, for my own specific circumstances, the expectation to interact with another person is just always stressful because you guys are provably 14 years old, and anytime you have authority over me, there is nothing I can do. And so I'll go into the doctor's office and it'll even be up into like the 150s, 160s. And when I take it, again, real measurements of meaning chunks of 3 to 5, 3 times throughout the day, it's literally normal. And so, and then you just go into somewhere and there's like, yeah, here's another pill. And it's just like the whole, again, relationship of academia, pharmaceutical industry, and policy is just straight up fraudulent. And so I'm still waiting for anybody from Harvard, Johns Hopkins. Again, Professor Carroll, he's over at Hopkins. He can call over his colleagues in the medical department, and we can see if fundamental logic turns off in a medicine in that building over there. Be a real challenge. I'm going to have to study up hard. Because again, the language structure you use to describe these things still is all of this stuff that we talk about, and I just solve it in the complete general. And so overall, in terms of a personal update, it's kind of what I expected. Again, slightly better, frankly, because I didn't think you'd even jaundice at all or have any sort of, again, kind of just the diagnosis was an acute flare-up. Again, originally it was liver failure, and then it was just like an acute flare-up in the context of alcoholism, which is still, again, it's just, again, this unstressed population and this, let's label somebody else's disease, which again, I don't care in any way if you call me an alcoholic. It's just not scientific. Saying alcoholic hepatitis, that makes sense. Right? Hepatitis caused by alcohol, correct. But labeling some sort of insecure behavior in which people can't control their behavior as an ick, workaholic, alcoholic is just not reflective of the behavior. And so that's just on the personal. On the general, again, it was this, again, elasticity is definitely, what is elasticity to functionality? I mean, we've covered that pretty substantially, and being blobs of water that we are, you want to preserve your elasticity. And so on a personal level, just again, completely remove the stimulus. And so then again, I even dropped down, so I wanted to emphasize your blood work is like that's your scorecard, right? It's like we have these recommendations, but once you get your blood work, it's like that is whether you had 10 beers a day or 5 beers a day or 25 beers. It's just like, that's kind of what you're working with. And so overall, clearly I've had zero alcoholic beverages. I will have zero. And it's not like a thing. Like I said, at no point in my life it's just like very literally you just kind of sit there. What do you do with this added profundity of weirdness of that guy right there is talking to me about the shit he won't talk about in public, and I cannot eat because of that. And then you're going to come outside next to me and ask me, are you eating? And I'm like, I can't eat because you guys are doing this shit. And then you're like, well, you look healthy. And it's like, well, clearly not. What do we do about that, guys? Oh, it's just Brad's liver. Who gives a fuck? But again, overall quality of life, I have no symptoms. And if it's just, I get some reversal and it's even kind of close to the normal. Again, the KPA was the only thing that was kind of like the 8.5. And then to the actual blood work, I don't have it pulled up right here, but the ALS or the liver-specific enzymes were in the normal range. The bilirubin was the only one that was like, and it was like a 2.5. It was literally 2.5, and like you start seeing jaundice or like whatever at like low 2s. Sometimes they say mid 2s. That's the one thing you always see me like looking at my eyes. I don't know. They kind of look normal. Again, I don't know. This is something I never like thought of before. And so, but again, bilirubin kind of like a leftover byproduct of not breaking down your red blood cells. But then the overall functionality where you have good blood work, a little bit of scarring where it's like, okay, I'm that situation is like a little more reassuring than bad blood work and a little bit of scarring, right? Because the scarring to me is it's like you definitely don't want it, but if you have good functionality, that's better, again, in terms of quality of life. So obviously just don't drink and haven't drinking anything. Again, it's just not a thought. Like if I would have had blood work where any enzyme was elevated for any amount of time, I just would have stopped, not drank anything. It's just not difficult. And then the calorie thing, it's all of this stress, which is completely independent of a substance. So again, grave bodily harm under, again, profound and illegal circumstances, but life is life. It is what it is, and no one gives a fuck still at the making of this video. And so, again, the bilirubin content didn't seem super relevant to any sort of vital function or life quality whatsoever. And then there was 2 other little ones. Again, it was like literally 0.1. It was like the slightest significant digit into into the yellow area. But then again, I say the same thing for things that are, a couple little bit into the green area. But I think most of them were pretty substantially. Again, I think maybe the thing that comes to mind is like 44, and like 46 was like one of the liver ones. So still kind of like the upper end of like, of the normal range. And so closer to the smack dab in the middle, the better, I guess. But overall, again, the readout from my perspective and from the specialist, which again, that's not even like a dig on specialists. It's just if you have enough standardization, enough data points, there's no secret analysis to make. Point being is what's the point to go into the doctor? I'm not sure. But regardless, and so there was just a couple that were kind of just like the higher end of normal, but overall their readout, my readout, overall normal in terms of functionality of the blood work, with moderate to substantial scarring. Hopefully that reverses a little bit. So then on the cellular level there, it's again, you have some sort of stressing agent, specifically the alcohol metabolizing collagen, I think is the word they use, but just again depositing. Again, is it fat? Is it just? I think it's collagen, depositing collagen to stiffen up the liver, so you don't have this natural elasticity. But then again, does it just slowly break down some of it? It just seems to be kind of the apparent cellular processing, which seems to make sense. And so, again, that just is what it is. At the making of this video, still do not have constitutional rights, but I dropped so then once I had, no cancer, no mass, reassuring on that sense, dropping the CBD content to just a full spectrum, which in general, you should always take full spectrum, but just a total cannabinoid content orally of like 30 milligrams of just full spectrum CBD dominant hemp full spectrum oil. And so, again, that's the only thing. And then, point being is, again, the big stimulus is not having constitutional rights. I've had to move 8 different times. Never has consuming alcohol been like a response to stress. You guys just don't know what it's like to be a synesthetic savant where you just can't mechanically chew and swallow. And then nobody around you seems to care, to the point where you have a major security apparatus, a redhead Fred coming out to you when you're making a LinkedIn post to a police chief. A police chief. Like, I make these posts knowing exactly who I'm posting about, and you're treating me like I'm a fucking kid. Oh, grave bodily harm stinks for Brad. Well, can't emphasize enough. Where's that RICO statute? Huh. We really need to refresh. We're gonna reread those legal definitions as currently codified here shortly. But the biggest, again, those were the biological concepts I wanted to emphasize. Just anything that came to mind. Really the standardization. Like I said, I think it's good. I think it represents an unstressed populace. There was no sort of secret interpretation to standardized medical practice. And so, yeah, that's what has come to mind now. Again, I don't like to draw these out any longer than naturally comes to mind. I have nothing written down whatsoever. But yeah, again, these are all just, again, talking points where we start here, and then if anything else comes to mind, I just re-reference these videos, which is super fun. So when I just had to delete all of those, again, shout out to Andrew Ross Sorkin and Random Publish House, all of those videos where I have direct scientific analysis, now I can't reference those. So that's really fun, but again, if they're not out there, it's destruction of historical evidence, and so it's not my job, and it's not like anybody is watching these stuff on YouTube. And so that is what I have for in terms of biological concepts that come to mind. I feel like there's going to be more, but I don't want to draw this out for longer than the natural, what I have at my mind currently. So in towards the market, again, nothing really new. We are sitting at 2:15 p.m. And so DFTX is holding up well. Again, this literally would have been, this is a swing of $50,000. This would have been a profit of about we had 15,000, so we would have been a profit of 35 grand today. Again, with all of this, I don't have constitutional rights. I'm sitting here going to get extorted completely illegally, to which I'm going to respond and tell them to go fuck themselves. But I don't have quality of life. Like, this isn't some movie. This isn't, I'm going to be this. It's just like, if you guys could just tell me you're not going to extort me anymore. I put $637,000 on income funds that is as stable as possible, and I can have some quality of life going to state parks, going to metro parks, making my little nature videos. Like, again, I've solved all of science. We're almost done again. But again, there's no magic step. There hasn't been step, set, the fundamental unit of a rhythm. But I can't even get into my workflow. I can't even get into my work rhythm of, again, being the most prolific academic and intellectual ever. I can't even pick up a book at Barnes & Noble for $20, which, again, that's such a high quality. You get paid, I buy your book, you get a little bit of free advertising, I get to do my analysis. It's such a productive activity. Reading and responding, which is like, what are kids doing at school? Oh yeah, they're learning to lie, cheat, and steal. Because people don't listen to what you say, they watch what you do. But anyway, that is what I have on the market today. Again, this will be at the end of that other 45 minutes, so this will be a lengthy one. But the biological topics came up with this appreciation in DFTX. So a little bit went with some management, I guess. Because it was selling off when we were last talking, I thought that would kind of continue. But holding up rather nicely. Again, it just is a long position where there's enough stimulus. We're going to hold this. We're not looking to sell this anytime soon. And so, but again, right, it always makes sense to buy if you think it's going to go up. So why not hold up? Do we think, after a big appreciation, should we buy more? Again, then it's just to the overall portfolio management as I'm doing nothing because, again, I don't have constitutional rights as I just articulate and I say in every video. So, again, we can't really even have a plan or anything. And so, but no, I will not be adding more. This is just what I have is what I have. If it were to trade really strong intraday, again, that's when I would take a big position. But that doesn't seem likely. And again, I don't prioritize sitting down and looking at the stock market at any point in time in my day right now. And so CF, again, we covered that. Okay, we covered everything else in the morning. So, yep, just wanted to cover the biological topics. I can still feel like there's some floating around, but that is what I have now. Still do not have constitutional rights at the making of this video at grave bodily harm. And so... And again, I did want to emphasize, again, going into the doctor, take one measurement, and it's just like, here's another pill. It's just like, that is no. I mean, that has, the fact that that's still happening, again, you guys just throw away careers every time. It is not, I'm a grown-ass man, and that is not how society is going to work. We're not going to casually commit scientific fraud at the cost of health. It is not going, no Perunios. You guys are provably incompetent. So that is what I have for this little section, finishing up at 2:19 p.m., and we will check in later.